good evening, good afternoon, or morning, wherever you are on this beautiful planet. This is Rebecca Jernigan. I am coming to you live from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web. And we are going to journey into the realms of the known to the unknown. And you are listening and watching Journeys with Rebecca from Project Camelot TV Network. Welcome and good evening. And if you haven't already heard his voice, yes, that is the infamous, so infamous Mr. JayPee.
Oh, yes.
And I want to, I forgot I didn't have my camera on. So, hey, everyone, welcome, good night, good day, and good afternoon or morning or wherever you're at. I did want to say to everyone that my guest, Marie D. Jones of Mind Wars, the history of mind control, surveillance, and social engineering by the government, media, and secret societies, which was the whole topic for tonight's conversation. I'm going to blame this on Mercury retrograde. I really am. I'm going to do it. I really am going to do this.
Why not? We can. As in, you know, people who follow this astrological, you know, I've been working in IT for 35 years. Mercury retrograde hits things every time. No kidding.
Well, this has been a particularly tough Mercury retrograde. There's just been a lot of communication issues and problems, and we're going to talk about that in another show, specifically designed for this internet stuff and all of the satellites and things like that that's going on. But that being said, there was some confusion with her getting on the show tonight, and I went back through and I've looked through all the emails. But what we will do is get her rescheduled as soon as we get through this portion, whatever happened here. The next thing is that my guest that was scheduled last week, Bob Davis, and he was talking about the UFO phenomenon. Should I believe? I did talk with him earlier today, actually, and I'm doing a special airing of his show. That's the reschedule tomorrow evening from 7 to 9 p.m. He's got all of his equipment fixed, and we're going to go into the UFO phenomenon. So that's not going to be a normal time slot for me, at least not at this time, but it is going to be a special show with Bob Davis. He is the reschedule from last week's show, Wednesday, that we couldn't get to go. So we've got him all fixed, and then Marie had some issues somewhere, so we didn't have her on, but we will get her rescheduled because her book is pretty intense, folks, and we're going to get into all of that when she is back on the air. So that being said, I also want to introduce that I have an astrologer coming on next week. Her name is Shelley Enteen. She'll be on Tuesdays, about every other week, hopefully. And we're going to do an astrological update. We're also going to be talking about what's happened with the eclipses. There's 2 eclipses in this month. We've also, welcome to the fall, if it's still that day for you, wherever you're at. So we have this going on. There is a lot of different things going on, energetically speaking, and it does affect in the astrology, and that astrology affects everything that we do, the unseen world, so to speak. So all of that's coming up, and I have some really great guests. Robert Morningsky. I have James Honeycutt from New Tesla Technologies. He's coming back, and he's going to be up in the first week of October. And Michael Salas, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, he's going to be on. Bruce Fenton and his wife Daniela will be on, and he is he's an explorer, and he's been down in Peru and Ecuador into some of the caves and caverns. So I'm excited to have that couple back on, talking about what's going on. The last time they were on air with me was back in 2012. So it's been a minute. And so I have a lot of great guests for the show coming up. And provided we can get through whatever is going on, whether it be Mercury retrograde or all this internet issues and things like that, we're going to definitely get this done. So that being said, tonight, JayPee is with me, and we are actually going to be kind of running the gamut. And one of the topics, which is my favorite topic, because it can go down so many rabbit holes, which is the energetics of what's going on. We're gonna talk specifically about this Mercury retrograde for just a second. I'm not an astrologer. I'm not talking about this in an astrological view. I'm talking about this as an energetic thing and what it is, what it does. And you can see this has been a pretty rough week for a lot of people, maybe even yourself in the last week as well. Mix-ups in communication, emails from people that I've accepted for, I don't know, years, all of a sudden end up in my junk folder, and I don't know why they're doing that. It's so there's all of this missed appointments and people not responding, or all of a sudden you get a huge influx of everybody responding to you. So there's just a lot of things that affect us on our daily life, and it's learning how to sit back and kind of take a deep breath. I've had to do that quite a few times today, is learning to sit back and take a deep breath and just go, okay, this too shall change. Everything changes, right? So that's kind of what this is. And I want to have JayPee kind of talk for a moment and share his view on these energetics that are happening. And if you are listening on the YouTube right now, you have questions, any questions that you would have, please type them in, and then we'll retrieve them and answer them right here on the show tonight. So we don't want you to be shy. JayPee and I can talk about just about anything, and we'd certainly be happy to do that within reason. Within reason, we will. So, JayPee, how are these energies been affecting you?
To say that nothing is going on is not an understatement. It's completely crazy. Everything is crazy. People are losing their rag everywhere. Have you noticed? People are just like,
yeah.
I mean, it's one of these. This is the word of the year. I think is aneurysm. You know, which is like too much pressure in the cranium for whatever's being able to hold it, you know. And what seems to be happening is people are irascible. They're more and more grumpy. I mean, when I say people, I feel myself, and then I ask everybody else, well, how have you been feeling? Okay. So there's been a lot of that going on. You know, relationships are exploding, people are exploding. And, you know, the way it feels like, we were discussing this the other night, and the kind of picture that I was getting is like multicolored, very, very fine candy floss that kind of floats onto the earth, that has a different emotional content and an incredibly extreme emotional content, that you think once it's passed, it's like, what the heck just happened? I don't normally do that. That's not me. And it's this very unpredictable thing that, you know, marks times like this in Earth's history as like periods of madness. And, you know, I've just been talking with Cliff High from halfpasthuman.com, and he was, you know, been talking about the energetics as well, of the planetary changes as the planet expands, you know. And of course, if the planet expands, you know, everything is going to move around underneath it. It's like you know, these fly agaric mushrooms, the mushrooms that have the little cowl, and then as they grow, the cowl tears into little shreds, and that's what make the little white spots on the red mushroom. But actually, they were part of an original thing. And maybe one day the Earth will be like that, and, you know, and America will be, you know, 8,000 miles away from Britain, and Britain will be like 2,000 miles away from Europe. You know, everything's just like enormous, long floating islands on a very large planet. So that's something to look forward to.
I don't know if I want to say we can look forward to it, but okay. Well, let's talk about, you know, Cliff High. I want to talk about him for a minute because he's a very interesting fellow. I've interviewed him quite a few times in the past, and he has a very different way of viewing information. And I find that when he speaks about energy, he speaks about it from a level that is extraordinary. It really is. So as and the reason why I brought him up for the moment is because he's talked in the past about some of the energetics and how the earth is expanding, and it contracts, and everything expands and contracts depending on temperature and pressure, and whether it's internal or external pressure. So it's, you know, really part of the energetics. And it all has to do with what you were talking about with those ribbons. You called them ribbons. I think that's really an interesting term. They seem to float down on you. And it's very indicative of the activity, shall we say, that's going on out in our solar system. And you may be able to sense it more than other people, but maybe what other people are sensing is, well, you know, all of a sudden I just got this way, or I felt this way, and that's not a behavior that I'm used to, you know, expressing or feeling or sensing or certainly sharing with anybody. And these are things, as times for people to be kind to themselves, and not, because they can really admonish themselves pretty harshly and you know, think that they're becoming some kind of a bad person or something. And it has nothing to do with that. It's about not owning it and understanding that everything's temporary, and how to kind of, I guess you would say you'd kind of balance yourself out with that incoming onslaught of energetics. And it does affect us. It affects us tremendously. And so when you can learn how to sense and feel that, like you did, right? You sensed it, you felt it, and you recognize that it's really not part of your normal behavior pattern, then you can look outside of yourself. You can I always check, you know, it's always an internal check. Is that coming from me? No? Okay. That means I've got something that I need to, it doesn't work for me. And so you can kind of slough it off and not let it enter and filter through into you, so that you can just back it off and just let it go. So you're kind of in charge and control of that. Does that make sense?
So it's being able to step back from it and say, is this mine or is this not mine? That's, I mean, I think that's probably the best advice you can give, because that's the first insight into actually, you know, looking and knowing yourself is, you know, did I just feel that? You know, did you just feel that? Yeah.
Yep. And that happens a lot. Like, you know, when you're, especially if you're in a vehicle with somebody and you're taking a trip and you drive through areas that's not your normal areas to drive through, and sometimes it can happen in your normal areas. And you can just feel the shift when you're driving through. You're going, wow, what was that I just drove through? You can feel it. You can actually feel it. It's almost palpable to you. So yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, it wasn't it wasn't on, because I don't have a car anymore. It's a long story, but I walk sometimes, and I walk to the bus, which is a long way. And I was walking along the road recently, and I walked into one of these things, and it's like a kind of dense emotional field. So it feels like you've just walked into somebody's rage, you know, or somebody's rage has walked into you, and you're now walking along with this rage, and then suddenly it goes away. It's like, what just happened there? And you know, I very distinctly remember it happened, you know, about last year, I think. I was walking on the way to the bus stop, and because it's a long way, and so it was very interesting. This thing just kind of flared up, and it was in the space of about 15 feet on a corner on a country road, you know, just like the middle of nowhere where I walk, you know, many times. And I thought, that felt like it's a kind of big candy floss bubble so of emotion. And that was really weird. And, you know, I suppose I'm sort of emotionally sensitive, you know, but essentially I can feel things that happen. You know, they happen in my body, but you know, I notice when I notice them, as you say. So,
You still with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you there?
Okay. Okay. There we go. Are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still with you. Did you lose
Okay.
me?
No, just having some weirdness. It's Mercury retrograde. I'm blaming it all on that. I told you I was doing that. Yes, I'm blaming it all on Mercury retrograde. So this energy that doesn't belong to us, you know, this you know, all of this stuff that's out there. If we learn to become more sensitive to what's happening, and we tap into more of the subtle parts of who we are, we become more cognizant of our world around us, and we become more understanding. We become more knowing about who we are and what belongs to us and what doesn't. And it really does take, JayPee, it really does take, I guess you could say, time or work to make that happen, to practice at it. And I worked at it for, you know, I've always been a sensitive, and I had to learn how to differentiate what belonged to me and what didn't, because I was owning everyone's stuff. And that's a true definition, I guess, of an empath, as you feel everything. And you know, that's the reason why I built these classes around here, is in order to help people find some tools to be able to better help them.
Yeah, this is the quality known as empathy, and it's something that we're all going to be feeling. You know, I get the sense that, you know, where you've been or where you're at is where everybody's going to be at, and where you'll be at then. Well, again, you know, it'll be you know, the new normal, and it's part of our growing talents, as the thing that says that when Jesus said, all these that I do, you can do too, or something like that.
Yes, these things you can do and more or better, or
yeah,
something like
so
that. Yeah,
it's part of this expression into being you know, an evolving human, as opposed to somebody who is stuck. Now, it was, what was it? I can't remember whose quote it is, but you know, most people when they find enlightenment, they kind of dust themselves off and walk on as if nothing happened, because it's not always a very pleasant process, is it?
it's not. It is not.
And seeing the truth of things.
No, it is not. It is not an easy thing. Here is and we do have a question in the chat box here, so I'm going to go ahead and answer it before we move on from this particular topic, so we don't lose you know, lose sight of where we're at, because we can get so far down the road and somebody else has another question or something and then it doesn't get answered. It happens a lot. You learn to filter by understanding who you are, how you operate, how you feel about things, and are you recognizing what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you? And I'll give you a couple of examples here. When I was younger, we always had big family dinners on the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, that kind of thing. We always had the same foods were always served. You know, you had this for that holiday, had turkey for this holiday, etc., and so forth. Yes, and that will make sense here. Just bear with me. So one day, I was getting ready to fix a Thanksgiving dinner, and I was asking my then very small children, what kind of pie do you want to have with the turkey dinner? And they both looked at me and said to me, and they said, well, we don't really like turkey. Do we have to have turkey? And it just hit me, and I thought, well, you know, just because it's a particular day doesn't mean I have to serve this particular food, because that's a tradition through my family, but not necessarily something that you have to do. So it got me to thinking, what else am I doing in my life that's part of how I grew up? Somebody else's belief systems, somebody else's traditions, somebody else's likes and wants and needs. How much of that belongs to me? How much do I really resonate with it, and how much I don't? I didn't use those terms resonate in those days, but how much did I click with it, you know? And that's what got me started on thinking about this and learning to clear away the stuff that was kind of handed to me and that we accept as our own when it really isn't our own. It was either the way we was raised or, you know, the influence of other people, whether it be your parents or your siblings or school or whatever was the most, oh, what's the word I want to use here?
Conducive?
Well, that's, you can use that word. That wasn't exactly it, but it was influential. That was the word I wanted. The most influential in your life. So how you learn how to get rid of what doesn't belong to you is you have to stop and look at your own values and your own belief systems compared to what your family's belief systems was or how you were raised. And are they yours? Is there something that you could do that would be better than how you were raised or how your family believed or what have you? And if so, then that's when you begin to let go of those things. You are now beginning to find out who the authentic self is. And we've talked about that. Now we're getting into the authentic self. So, you know, this energy thing goes in, like I said before we started the show, it has a lot of rabbit holes you can go down. So learning how to get to the authentic self of really what triggers you, whether good or bad triggers, whether you're reacting to something as a knee-jerk reaction, if you're volatile because somebody said something that you heard that ticked you off, you know, 50 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever it is, you have to really figure out where's your triggers at, where is your ceiling at, and you can only do that by self-observation, by what's the other word I want to use here, JP? Not observation.
Objectivity.
Well, no, you want to look at yourself. You want to go inside of yourself and look at yourself and really kind of pull yourself apart. Now, and again, not about finding fault with yourself, but recognizing that, oh, well, when people do this, that does this to me. And when people say this and that does this to me. And I don't know that I really like responding that way. So I have to change my response because it's a program. We have a little program running that says, oh, when this happens, you act this way. When somebody says this, you say this. So it's kind of like when you're growing up and you have all these traditions, right? And you go, oh, wow, I don't even like turkey. Why am I making turkey, right? So we're not being our authentic self. So in order to learn how to filter, you have to figure out who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you ticked off, and you have to really get down into it. And the best way to do that is just to become silent within yourself. So now this takes another turn, and the other turn is that meditation is an extremely powerful tool. There has been a lot of scientific study done on meditation. And Time Magazine has put it on its cover, I don't know how many times, 7, 8 times. But science can prove that if you learn how to meditate, that it can take your body, literally your physical body, into a state of balance and brings it back into a state of normalcy. And it's usually just through the breath. It's learning how to breathe and learning how to let go so that you shut that chatter off that goes on in everyone's head. Everyone's head has all this chatter. And learning how to silence that chatter so that you can find out who you are is the best thing that you can do. That's part of the filter process. It sounds pretty hard to do, but it actually is not hard, but it does take time, and it does take honesty with yourself. Again, not about judging yourself or finding fault with yourself, but learning about yourself and who are you. And if you discover things that you don't like about yourself, then this is the ability to change that. And so you can filter these things when you walk into a room, like you, JP, were talking about. All of a sudden these ribbons came and all this reaction happened. But then when you stopped and thought about it for just a split second, it didn't take you very long, you realized that this wasn't really you, that it was just a passing thing that flew by.
That's just after I looked at my blood-stained hands and saw them. No. No. Honestly, I'm not a psychopathic murderer. Really, not today anyway. So look, there's another thing, and it was a gift from one of my guests a while ago, Tony Minervino. I don't know if you've come across him. Lovely man, chiropractic. Anyway, he gave us this, which is brilliant, and I've been using it ever since, and it so works for me. It really does. You will thank me. Okay, it's really simple. If you breathe in through the nose, really as big as you can, blow yourself up just like a balloon, and then out through your mouth, you will feel a lot better. It will discharge some of that pressure inside you. It's like there's a safety valve, and now we normally breathe the other way, and that pumps us up. So it's like a kind of body pump mechanism, you know. So if you breathe in through your mouth and out through your nose, that's like a bull, isn't it? But if you breathe in through the mouth and out through the nose, that's like breathing in and going, oh. Really. So there's a little giveaway for you.
No, the breath is extremely important. As a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because on my store page at my website, journeyswithrebecca.com, years ago I made some meditation CDs, and they were talking about beginning meditations. That's what it was. And they're free. It's in the store portion of my website because I didn't know where else to put it. But I have 4 of them online. And they are about the breathing technique, and they don't take very long. So you're free to go there. Check it out. That's journeyswithrebecca.com, and go to the store page. And certainly it will teach you how to breathe in and breathe out. And I learned about that, believe it or not, when I was, pardon me, training for, I was a sports fanatic when I was really young, believe it or not. And I was training, and I had a trainer teach me about the breath, and it was kind of interesting. And then when you go and meditate, the breath is actually opposite of how you train when you're wanting to build strength and stamina and stuff for sports like activities. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, it's you know, I think it's very much like using the technology of the body, because you know that's what we are. Mine's a bit like, you know, it's the esoteric books call the body the vehicle, right? And yes. It's so funny when you actually think about, I mean, for instance, I bought a car once, and it had been used by this guy who was 18 stone, massive, huge, 6 feet something, big guy, and basically he'd worn a kind of hole in the car, like where he slammed into the into the gear knob, what do you call it, stick shift, you know, all the stick shift was completely worn to hell, like he'd really pushed it hard, and all the seats had been squeezed out to the side. It was just incredible. I felt like a tiny person. I wasn't small either, you know. So you know, we make our impression on the world. And,
literally and figuratively.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was another interesting little factoid that Cliff was, you know, he was a superb download just then. One of the things he was saying is that an athlete, a very fit athlete's heartbeat can be detected 60 feet away.
60 feet?
Yeah, the magnetic field of the heartbeat of somebody going boom, 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 boom.
Now see how cool is that? Now we're getting into the magnetics, another form of energetics. Woo!
Absolutely, magnetics and scalar. So yeah. And that indeed we are scalar beings. You know, that's, I think that, you know, they're always talking about, you know, nobody can figure out how people who are psychic can do what they're doing. And then we've got these weapons that are called scalar, and we don't know how exactly they work, but they seem to work. And it seems to be, you know, maybe it's the same thing, you know. That's my British engineer voice. Not very reptilians. Anyway.
Well, I liked it. That was good. It
Yeah.
was a good impression.
But anyway, meanwhile, I just wanted to go back to the turkey thing, right?
Oh no, that spawned something. Okay.
Because it was Christmas time, and I went to my girlfriend's house. Much as I don't like these whole ceremonies, and I was kind of looking at this, like thinking, now, what part of the satanic ceremony I'm taking part in? Look at this. We're taking pleasure in very slowly slicing up to pieces a member of the avian community. You know, and there I am, and there's a photo of me slicing this duck, and I'm looking here when I'm looking on the screen, and I'm thinking, now, if I were to be standing next to a representative, an ambassador of Duck World, right, where people are duck, you know, there are duck people, okay, we got all the, you know, the avian people, there are, you know, there are eagle people, there are chicken people, turkey people, duck people, you know, I'm pretty sure somewhere in the universe, it's an infinite universe, one day we're going to have an ambassador for that, and they're going to be looking through my Facebook photos and say, oh yeah, I know. Oh yeah, what's that? And I say, yeah, that's Christmas. And oh yeah, what do you do at Christmas? Well, we take it. Yeah, that's a bit awkward, really, isn't it? You know what I'm saying?
Oh my goodness.
I have these weird thoughts like that. You know, that we you know, we don't treat these creatures very well. I have these chickens, and they don't lay eggs, and I'm not cruel to them, but they just don't lay eggs, and they're just useless chickens. And all I do is feed them, and this cock just, sorry, this cockerel, sorry, I can't say that. This cockerel goes, and it's like even he can't be bothered to crow.
Oh no.
Our quacks duck people, very, very likely, Colleen.
Well,
so
interesting. So, all right. So let's get back to
and further on from that, right? On Chicken Planet, do they have Kentucky Fried Human?
Yeah, I don't know.
And Jewish mama soup.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, we've got tribes out there that are still cannibals, so you know, there is something to be said about that. So,
yep. Tastes like chicken. Anyway,
yeah, everything tastes like chicken apparently. So that being said, let's get back to Cliff Eye and the magnetics and the scalar and all that stuff. Yeah. The magnetics are an extremely interesting form of energy, and so is the scalar. You know, I think people don't really recognize, pardon me, JP, that we have radioactivity in our bodies, and not necessarily because we've been exposed to it, and we have scalar, and we have all these different energetics within us, and substances, and they all react to different things in this world, right? Like if you put two magnets together, they either will try to pull apart or they'll try to go together, depending on the magnet, right? So they have this weird, and I used to play with magnets, by the way, when I was a kid. You can't really buy them anymore, they're so expensive, but I used to play with them all the time. We had them, and I would play with them, and I would click them back and forth, and I roll them around in my hand. I carried them around. My mother was just really, she's, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, they just feel really good. Playing with the magnets, they were my toy. But I always loved magnets. And I realized, you know, as I got older and you start learning science stuff about what goes on in the body and everything, some of the stuff that you do and you don't realize why you do it is there is a scientific reason for it, and it can be backed up with that. And there's still a lot of things that people don't, that science still doesn't understand. And I had an interesting conversation with one of my guests the other day, not on air, but off the air. And I had an interesting conversation, and they were talking about, he's a scientist himself. And he says, you know, I had to learn to step out of my science brain and become more objective. And he said, and when I did that, he said, everything that I learned became very different He said, because then I started accepting things that we couldn't yet understand. And, you know, through the years, I've talked a lot about that, about I can't explain everything, but I know that scientifically it exists, that we just don't have the instrumentation, or we certainly don't have the science people yet that are on the same wavelength, so to speak, to scientifically prove that. But it's kind of like, how do you prove love exists? You feel it, you sense it, you know it. And there's brainwave patterns that they found out that when you express different things, it triggers different things in your brain. And so scientifically, they can prove when you're feeling love or hate or anger or an emotional state of mind. They can't see love, but they can see the synapses going on in the brains when you feel love. So they're getting better at it, but they're not quite there. But this scientist was pretty interesting to talk to off the air, and I don't know if he's going to talk like that when I get him on the air. I find that a lot of the guests that I have when I carry on a conversation with them, that before we get on air, we have these long, in-depth conversations, and they're pretty profound. But when they get on the air, they have a tendency to back down and become kind of, this is my spiel, and this is how I need to present my material. You know, they have a difficult time just allowing for the information to flow from them. So I don't know if he's going to talk about that or not, but it was a really great conversation with learning how to become more aware of the unseen world, so to speak. That's what I call it. You know, I kind of live in both worlds. I have my feet planted in both, and I've learned how to marry the unseen world to this reality. And it can be quite a balancing act. But the magnetic energy that we all feel is because it's part of what we are, the scalar, the radioactive stuff. I mean, we are amazing creatures.
It's the, as I said, it's the body technology, because, you know, our bodies can measure things that scientific instrumentation has no idea about measuring.
Exactly.
Imagine if you were an ultra-dimensional person, like without a body, that could, you know, drive one if it had the right control panel and the right interface. And, you know, you had one grown up and groomed for years, and, you know, there you have your avatar being, and it's got all kinds of sensoria, which give the body the ability to smell things at hundreds of yards. You know, imagine the wolf is another technology, and
Exactly.
people have found, when they look at DNA, they keep finding signatures of people that, oh, this is Enki's work, you know. Yeah, signed by Enki. Yeah, he does have the South African accent, you know.
Well, you know, you know, we're kind of bouncing around here, but when we talk about energetics, you know, there's been so many creatures, species, entities, whatever you want to call them, that have been upon this planet Earth, and every time we are in a space, we actually leave a residual part of who we are. And that's the energetics. That's what you see all these ghost hunting shows are about, and et cetera and so forth. Some of them are picking up on residual energy, which is the leftover remnants of somebody who existed. Inky, you reminded me of that, because I was just reading some, I've had, I don't know, probably 20 books that's come in from authors. I've been scanning them all, and some of the things that they've been talking about, and I'm like, oh man, I connected that with that book and that book. I really wish that I could write more. I wish I could write it all. Write a book. I mean, I have like 4 of them sitting there that I started, and I just don't know how to finish them, because I'm just not geared that way. But anyway, here's all these, they used to call them gods and demigods. I mean, we even go back to look at Egypt, and we look at the pharaohs and all of that, they've made a huge impact on this planet. And their presence is still here, whether we see them or not, because a part of their residual energy resides there. That's why when you, that's part of how you pick up psychic impressions is by the energetic signatures. I talk about that forever. I'll probably continue to talk about that, the energetic signatures, because everybody has one, and it's always unique. It's like a unique it's like a unique phone number or a unique address. No two people probably have this. Yeah, no two people have the same address, physical. And that's what your birth chart's about as well. You could have the same people born at the same day, at the same time. They're still going to come in with a very different energy signature, because it's based on the DNA. It's based on who you have been, what you have carried in with this DNA and this new little being that you've, decided to come into this world as. So we're all very unique, and that's how you can sense things too, is by following the signature back to it's what I call the source of origin, or the point of origin. And that again is part of the class that I'm teaching on empath, which is really all about energetics. Exactly what we're talking about. We're just cubby holing it in a different way in order for people to be able to individually function better through their normal day. And even though some people would think that being psychic and clairvoyant and a medium and all of those things is not logical to be logical, it actually is part of who we are. So it makes more logic than it is just to be intellectual only. My opinion.
Absolutely. Well, I totally agree in that you need to have a well-developed intellect in order to channel the soul. Otherwise, you're just going to have it mouthing platitudes. Otherwise, it may be they may be coming up with very simple things, but it's not able to be expanded on in that way. It's like the mind is the tool for the soul, not because it's intellectually based, but it's the intellect is being driven by the heart. It's like the heart driving the head.
Right.
That's the way I try to operate anyway, particularly when I'm doing this, because it's about the feelings that express up as they come up from my feeling body, and they express as how do I mean to express? To outpicture. They're like a kind of zip file that opens up into like an area of knowing, like how to wire a particular circuit or something like that. But it's like this is like a download, but it's coming through the heart as a feeling that then unpacks itself into an intellectual thought form, or a thought form that exists within the area of the intellect. Or did I just lose everybody? Or did I?
No. It's fantastic. I was just going to expand on that a little bit by saying, when you take an emotion, like you were saying, from the heart, and you have to put it up in your head sometimes in order to figure out. It kind of becomes the processor. Your brain is just the processor for who you are. It's like the CPU. But I think we're all very emotionally driven beings, whether we recognize it or not. Some people stay in their head more than they stay in their emotional body. They've kind of disconnected or kind of sort of closed off or squeezed shut those energy channels, so to speak. But we are pretty much all emotional beings, and which is one of the reasons why when you experience that ribbon thing where, all of a sudden is because your emotional body is aware of it because it sent it to the brain once before or many times before and says, hey, guess what? There's something here that just kind of whacked off here and made you all crazy for a second. And it's an identifier. you know, you have to be able to identify feeling something, but not being, because that's the way the human brain works right now, is that you have to take this emotional thing and go, okay, what is that? Where does that belong? What do I do with it? We got all these little cubby holes in our brain, right? I call it the filing system.
Tagging. It needs some sort of tagging system, and I think that would be, well, that's what the tarot is. And you know, I helped you edit a few of your tarot CDs as well. That is like it's like a gauge. It's weird how it works, and that's part of the magic of the technology of the human body, is that your hands can pick out vibrating objects such as tarot cards, and they move, somehow they flow from one to the other. You know, if you're shuffling a card, and often you'll get a card that jumps out because it's so energized by the vibration that you're in, that it will leap out of the pack as you're shuffling it. And you pick it up and say, aha, you know, that's always very significant. I find the ones that, I mean, sometimes they really jump out, and that's because of the way that your hands are vibrating, and the card is vibrating because of the energetic of that card. And so what I'm saying is that the tarot deck is more than just a divination tool. It's a gauge. You can use it like a, you know, like a scale to measure things, like a ruler, in terms of energetics, because each of the cards represents an energetic domain. Am I making sense?
Absolutely. So let me share with you what I do. Every once in a while, I have to replace a deck of cards. They're not like a regular deck of playing cards. They kind of wear out. You know, they're just, you're not supposed to shuffle them and do all that weird stuff with them like you would a regular deck of cards, but they still get kind of wore out. But whenever I pick up a deck of cards, or it doesn't matter what I'm doing, I could be picking up anything, but we were talking about tarot cards. So when I pick up a deck, I may have to go through 2 or 3 decks, and they're always the same one. It's just there's, you know, maybe 2 or 3 of them there for me to choose from, and I always pick the one that feels like it resonates, because somebody's handled that deck before I got it, before they put it in the package and sent it off. So somewhere it's gotten handled by somebody, and I can feel whether or not that vibration will resonate with me or not. And if it doesn't, then I don't buy that deck. I get a different deck. I look for it until I can find one that resonates with me. But then I don't leave it at that. I bring it home. I have to make that deck my own. In other words, attune that deck to me and me to it. It's a synergistic relationship between that deck and myself, so that when I'm holding that deck, before I start using it at all I'm asking for is the truth and the wisdom and the guidance of whatever needs to be shown to whoever's asking the questions. It's not for me, it's for the other people who ask for these things, right?
Exactly. It's in service.
That's right. It's in service, and I'm in service. So that's the synergy as well, connection. And so when I sit down and do a reading, I think about the person's name before I start doing the reading. Of course, I always have my readings are set already, so I have appointments, right? So before I even get the deck out anymore, it talks to me. You know, I don't really read the cards. I call them holders of information. So it's like each card will resonate with whatever that person needs to know, and it shows up in my space. And then I just tell them what's shown up in my space. And it is all about energy. So
I think you just described exactly what you mean by an energetic signature. When you were saying you were talking about the buying the different decks of cards. When you looked at the cards in the shop, or you felt the cards in the shop, there were some that felt good. Some I was thinking, it might also be to do with the time and date and location of where those cards were printed, and
yeah,
who cut them, and you know, You know, very simple things like it might be Friday afternoon at a printer's, you know, and there's a lot of booze involved, and you could probably even pick up the booze and say that's a, you know, that's a Warminster Pale Ale or something.
Well, you know,
that's a highly tuned empath.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you know, that's, and I've talked about this little experiment that people can do, and it really is very simple. Everybody has to go to the grocery store, right? So when you go to the grocery store, you walk down the aisles, and I don't know about everybody else, but I always have to have a little bit of a list so that I don't forget some of the essential things, you know. So like, hey, if I'm out of salt, I got to buy salt. If I'm out of butter, I got to buy butter, you know, whatever, right? So I make this little list. And I really do try to not go beyond that list of what I need just to be able to function with no matter what it is that I'm going to be preparing or cooking or whatever. And I don't do much shopping at the grocery store anymore. Most of the stuff is bought local and things like that. So I don't do the grocery shopping like I used to at a grocery store. But for those that still do, you can walk into the grocery store and pick an aisle. I don't care what aisle it is. I don't care if it's the fruit and produce aisle. I don't care if it's the canned soup aisle. I don't care what it is. But maybe you have your idea in your mind that, oh, I'd like a can of chicken noodle soup. I'm just using that as an example. I don't know if it came to mind. So you go down and you grab a can of soup and you throw it in you absentmindedly just throw it in your cart. And you say, oh, I need a bag of potato chips. You throw those in the cart. Oh, I think I need a pound of sugar. So you throw that in the cart. And so on and so forth. Pretty soon you get to the checkout aisle and you get home and you've got all this food that for different things that you want to prepare, and you go, gosh, none of that sounds any good. I wish I would have got something different at the grocery store. It's because your body was telling you that it didn't want any of that stuff, but you weren't paying attention. So when you go in the grocery store, you walk down the aisles, and then you kind of have to do this slowly at first, because if you go too fast, you'll miss the subtleties of what's being projected to you. Because your idea when you go in the grocery store is not to hurry to get through it or to be in a hurry to get from point A to point B, but it's to buy what your body wants you to buy for you, what you need. And if you're buying for a family, that can also be put a part of the equation. What does your family need? And when you start shopping intuitively like that, you'll find that you're picking more and more foods that are non-GMO, that there are more organics. There's less junk food, more healthy foods, and it's because that's what your body is asking you to do. And it will let you know, and the more you begin to eat intuitively, the better you begin to feel, because you're feeding that energetic signature that's unseen to you, and a lot of times unfelt. You don't feel it. It's not like your body's saying, oh, hey, I need you to go down and buy some green beans today, right? But it's telling you what it wants when you go to the refrigerator or you open up your cupboard and you go, gosh, nothing sounds good. I don't know why I bought all this, because I don't want any of it. Have you ever done that?
I try it at the moment. Actually, my body is really telling me what it wants to eat and what it doesn't want to eat. Having gotten rid of my yeast, the candida overgrowth, which apparently made me fat. I'm not fat anymore, and I'm not skinny, but you know, there are things that can be seen again. That's an improvement. So it's wonderful, but it's been quite a path. It's been quite, you know, hard work to because it's like having a screaming child in your body saying, "I want more sugar. I want more. Give me some of that bread. Go and have some bread."
Sugar is extremely addictive.
Yeah. So now I'm unhooking myself. So I've been unhooking myself from sugar, which is, you know, it seems to be one of the worst. So here's the thing that I got into the mind of the candida, because like I was thinking everybody's got this thing, and I got into it, and it was like, it's really gross, isn't it? Yeah. But it kind of lives inside your body like another body inside you. You know, there's so much that is growing between your organs, inside and also in your brain. well, I will talk in the first person. In my brain, fine hairs that then short circuit your thoughts that say, go and get some more bread. Wouldn't you want some more beer? Don't you want beer? Oh, I like beer. Don't you fancy a beer? I'd love a beer. You know, I don't like beer. You know, so you know, everything that this thing calls for now gives me a complete migraine, if not the day after, or 2 days after, even for the worst. Yeah. So it's been a weird sort of journey because it's sudden, you know, and now I'm very clear in my brain, really clear in my brain. So much more clear that I can handle things like electronics and computer coding and things again. And it's like this thing has taken over me.
So back to my guest of yesterday, he was talking about neurogenesis, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, tell me about it. I need some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some of that neurogenesis talk.
Yeah, the neurogenesis. I don't know if you heard that interview, but I thought it was really fantastic when he was talking about food, but food itself has an energy to it. And it's no different than when I was telling you about picking up a tarot deck and some of it feels good. I can go into a grocery store and walk by, especially the produce counter. The produce counters are the biggest thing because they are handled more than our canned goods and frozen foods are. But the energy of whoever has packed it or where it was grown or whatever is extremely noticeable in produce. I think it's because it's picked and it has to be packed specifically in these things, and it's not necessarily done on a conveyor line. And so I can pick up people's sadness or their stress or their lack of happiness, whatever, with the fresh produce. Now, there's other, like especially in the canned food stuff. That's interesting because there's some of it that literally has such a low register of energy, measurable energy to it, that you think to yourself, my goodness, this just wouldn't help me at all. There's just no exchange of energy here whatsoever. Because that's really all you're doing whenever you eat something. It's an exchange of energy. It is allowing you to partake of it because your body requires it, and you are to enjoy it and honor it for what it's helping you with. That's a synergistic relationship between food. And I think if people understood that eating is, and I talked about this with my guest yesterday, that eating is not just something we do to keep ourselves alive. It is an exchange. We exchange information with that food. And that saying, you are what you eat, in some sense, that's true. Because if you are eating foods that are filled with junk, and I mean, just, you know, some of the labels will scare you to death, man. I mean, it's like, whoa, what is that stuff? I have
it's
to bring, you have
it's
to bring
when
it home
even the
and
high
look it up
school
and go,
education
oh my God. Yeah,
can't pronounce the words.
Yes, chemistry and chemistry class. There it is. I wasn't real great at chemistry either, so there you go. So you have to come home and you look it up and you go, oh my God, this is stuff they use to make tires out of, or oh my God, this is stuff
that foam yoga mats.
Yeah, there you go.
In the baby milk or something. All sorts of crap is in baby milk. I saw this guy mix all the stuff that's in baby milk like one bit at a time, and it was just horrible. Yeah, give me a movie anytime.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so getting back into the energetics of that, there's something to be said about really honoring the food that you are putting in your body, and however that food comes to you, you need to really kind of sense what it is. I mean, there's times when I've been partaken of food, and I could feel that there wasn't much niceness about the food because of where it came from, not necessarily the person that was serving it. And you have to do some energetic work on it before you can even ingest it, because one of the things that I have found is that when I ingest food that is extremely heavily laden in chemicals, I get this really weird feeling right here in my neck, and it starts spreading. I mean, it's like I can feel
like
it.
a metal ribbon.
It's just awful feeling, you know. And
you know what it is? It's like that the sewage pipe that goes down onto the beach. You know, this. Oh no, yeah, sorry, yeah, that's not nice.
yeah, I think I hear what you say in pictures. Please remember that.
Oh, sorry about that. and it was a very all right. Okay. Meanwhile, hang on. So,
oh no. I love it. Anyway, so energetically speaking, we have to be more cognizant of what we ingest, and that includes our own particular household environment. So, you know, like your chemicals you clean with, what you do your laundry with, what you wash your body with. I mean, it's still all part of it. It really is all part of it.
Well, it goes into your skin. You know, you hold it against your skin all day. So if you know, if you had a piece of chloroform and you put it on a cloth and you held it against your nose, you'd get poisoned by it. If you held it against your skin, it goes into your skin. You know, there are some chemicals that go right into your skin, like nail varnish remover or what's that? Isopropyl alcohol. It just goes right into your skin, and can really mess up your body chemistry. Strangely enough, you have to drink alcohol to get rid of the stuff like that, because it makes your body say, "Oh, I've got stuff in it I need to get rid of."